Okay, doesn't look like I was quite joining a little earlier than usual, so we will start it out nice and slow like we always do. And just want to start out, happy Weed Wednesday, guys. Stony Progressive going to be doing clips on, going to try to get through a handful of states. All right, knock over the camera right off the bat. Going to get a hand through of states that are currently looking at moving to medical marijuana, looking to move their medical up to recreational, and currently 18 states are pure recreational. And my one state that I live in, Michigan, is one of those. And I currently live in Florida right now, which is medical. And we are looking at something. So I got Florida up on the later schedule. Be looking at Arkansas, Florida, Ohio, Missouri, finishing off with North Carolina tonight. That's going to be the last state I go over. I also got some lots of clips for the evening. We are going to be finally getting to that Useful Idiots White House press briefing, of course. The big picture had something on Ghislaine, a couple strikes, protests, and and then there was a fantastic group talk today that I wanted to show a clip on in Rome, just unleashed, and Rome's pretty fantastic for that. So wanted to go over that today. So we'll get through a handful of states. We're going to get through a handful of clips. We're going to not really have any lighthearted discussions today because everything's pretty intense. And we will get started right away with a smoke break video, Useful Idiots. Let's see here. Not that one. And I'll be having it over myself a lot of the time because I'm going to have to do a lot of digging while videos go on. We're going to start out today. That was the stream, if anybody wants to know, for the jams we were listening to today. No copyright, 2 hours of chill out hip hop. If you like those beats, that's 2 hours of hip hop. You can chill out, relax, and blaze to. But with our Stony Progressive, we're going to be hitting some news right off the bat. And we're going to start out with Aaron Mate and Katie Halpert on Useful Idiots. Aaron Mate is currently filling in. And today they had, or this is from a few days ago, they had an interview with Jordan Peterson on the Flint water and a few other topics. And Jordan Chariton, of course, being from Status Quo. So a lot of good. Aaron Mate and Jordan Chariton are two fantastic actual journalists. They don't just talk and regurgitate. They actually dig. They actually go to places, and they do the real journalist work.
Jordan, thank you so much for joining us, for coming back to Useful Idiots.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. We want to start off by asking you about this great piece that you have that you co-wrote at The Guardian. Can you tell us about what you discovered?
Yeah, I mean, basically to simplify it so people don't get too confused, there was a major financial fraud that resulted in the poisoning of Flint. Basically, a allegedly fraudulent bond deal that allowed Flint, which was broke in 2014, it didn't even have a credit rating, to borrow $85 million somehow to join a new water system. So what myself and Charlie LaDuff found out was essentially the original prosecution team that was investigating the Flint water crisis. They were building a racketeering case, which is known as RICO. RICO was created in the 1970s to go after organized crime, sometimes mafia figures. So they were building that kind of case based on that financial fraud that led to the poisoning of Flint. They were on the verge of filing those charges against state of Michigan officials and others. But then the current attorney general, she won election, Dana Nessel. She comes into office in 2019. She purged that team that was following the money. And then she fired them, and then she never pursued that racketeering case. So kind of a story of details on the financial fraud that led to the water crisis, exposing that as of now, the current attorney general has basically swept it under the rug. Other details in the story show that if those financial charges had gone forward, Wall Street, particularly JP Morgan and Wells Fargo, who they issued the bonds for that allegedly fraudulent bond deal, that they were facing hundreds of millions of dollars in liability if those financial charges had gone forward.
This special prosecutor who was like taken off the case, who was he and why was he fired?
Yeah, so basically, so your audience knows, from 2016 to 2018, that's when the original investigation went on. The Attorney General of Michigan at the time was a Republican. He appointed a special prosecutor, so like a Mueller for the Flint investigation. That special prosecutor and his team, they had charged 15 state and city officials with everything from involuntary manslaughter to misconduct in office to financial fraud. But for some reason, Dana Nessel, when she was running for office as a Democrat to win Attorney General, she started crapping on the investigation, calling it a politically charged show trial, and basically kind of poisoning the well before she got in there. So she, based on my sources, she basically wanted to get rid of anyone who was appointed by the Republican Attorney General, and I guess take the glory of, justice for Flint for herself and her prosecution team. But it never really made sense why she got rid of this whole team, because for an investigation that was as complicated as Flint, you're investigating the health department, the environmental department, financial schemes. You wouldn't want to just purge the whole team and start brand new 3 years later. You'd want to keep some people from that team. She did not keep most of the people from that team. So her given reasons for firing that prosecutor and team were that they didn't secure all the evidence, that there were like 20 million new documents that were found that they didn't secure. My reporting, that's not true. A lot of the documents that the current attorney general magically found were just kind of like duplicates that the previous prosecutors were aware of, but they had no investigative value. But it really, to your question, Aaron, it really has done a disservice to the people of Flint, because that first prosecution team had momentum. Previous reporting I did for The Intercept, they were actually building a case against former Governor Snyder for involuntary manslaughter. They were building a case to go after the governor for involuntary manslaughter. When the current attorney general came in, fired that team, the prosecutor she put in place, they charged them with a misdemeanor last year. So not only is there a discrepancy between why was the previous investigation going to throw the book at state officials for financial fraud, but why is it that this current attorney general has not pursued those charges? But also, why is it that the previous prosecution was really going aggressively against the governor? This prosecution team charged him with a misdemeanor.
And this is a bipartisan, the misconduct was bipartisan, correct? The alleged misconduct, I should say.
Yeah, so basically the bulk of it was the Snyder administration. He was Republican. So a story I did last year broke that literally Snyder's top officials had their phones wiped right before the launch of the criminal 18 months earlier than he told the public. So definitely in the actual process that Flint was getting the Flint River water, it was on the Republicans. However, I mean, the Democratic Party, the people of Flint, were excited. A Democratic governor was coming in. A Democratic attorney general was coming in. Obviously, they were not getting what they needed under Snyder. So people I speak to in Flint are very disappointed. Governor Whitmer in Michigan has not followed through on a lot of promises she made to them. And the current attorney general, who's a Democrat, based on my reporting, has swept financial fraud under the rug, gone a lot less aggressively against the governor than her predecessors. And then there's Obama too. Obama was president when this happened. A lot of people focus on, he went to go take a sip of water in this photo op. That was terrible. But what a lot of people don't realize is Obama refused to declare Flint a disaster He did not give it a federal disaster declaration. They gave it a state of emergency. That's important because a disaster declaration, in addition to releasing more funds to Flint, you could have sent the the Federal Army Corps of Engineers into Flint to dig up those pipes pretty much right away. But Obama did not declare it a disaster under the reason federal disaster declarations are for hurricanes and natural disasters. I would argue an exception could have been made for the poisoning of this city. So Obama not only drank the water, and which arguably Michael Moore says it wasn't even really Flint water, it was actually from Air Force One, but he also did not provide Flint what they needed. So definitely the original sin was under Republicans, but Democrats have certainly been in on this cover-up based on my reporting.
Why do you think Obama didn't take the steps that he could have taken?
Why did Obama not take the steps he could have taken on a whole host of other things?
But this one's just politically such a home run. Like, it's a Republican governor at fault. Democrats need to win Michigan. So even from the point of view of a cynical politician, this would have been the perfect thing for a Democrat to save the day on. But they didn't. They were just as they decided to be complicit.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that people I have spoken with say Obama genuinely believed his EPA and people who were feeding him information that the lead levels were getting better in Flint, that the infrastructure was being replaced as fast as it could. If he believes that, he was incredibly naive. I mean, I broke a couple of years ago that Governor Snyder and his team were manipulating the lead data to make it look like the lead levels were back to normal when they weren't. They were running people's water right before taking the tests, which is against federal regulations for how you test water for lead. So based on people I spoke with, Obama was just kind of trusting his EPA, his environmental people. To me, I think it's broader than that. At the end of the day, Wall Street was involved with poisoning Flint. Flint had received water from Detroit's water system for 50 years without a problem. And that was from Lake Huron, which is Great Lakes water, some of the purest, cleanest water in the world. So basically, state officials, city officials, landowners, banks had the brilliant idea, let's create a brand new water system for Flint, and they'll leave Detroit and get and join this new water system. And JP Morgan and Wells Fargo were a part of that deal. The fraud that the RICO charges were going to be based on was a fraudulent deal. Flint was broke. It could not legally borrow more money. So to me, I think Obama, Republicans, the current Democratic Attorney General, I think the fact that Wall Street could face significant liability in this, I think that played a part in why a narrative has been pushed. This is over. It's solved. The water's meeting regulations. Now it's more like a trust issue. It's not the water's fine. It's just about regaining the residents' trust. And we know if Obama didn't go after Wall Street for tanking the global economy, what makes you think Obama would have done anything to go after Wall Street for a fraud financial deal that led to a city being poisoned?
And your article points out that this RICO case that you're reporting on, uncovered possible new evidence of JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo being especially complicit when it comes to this crisis.
Yeah. And by the way, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo were sued civilly last year on behalf of 2,600 Flint children. So basically why they were sued and why they might have faced liability if these RICO charges went forward. So this fraudulent bond deal, what allowed that fraudulent bond deal to go forward, what allowed Flint, a broke city, to borrow $85 million to join this new water pipeline was basically a phony environmental order. So there was an environmental order that was created because Flint, if there was an environmental emergency, there would be an exception and Flint could go past its debt limit to borrow more money. So there was no environmental emergency. It was basically concocted to clean up a local lime pit, a sludge pit. And the money that was earmarked for that cleanup actually went to Flint's portion of this new water system. So Flint could join this new water system. Where JP Morgan and Wells Fargo come in, according to this environmental order, JP Morgan and Wells Fargo, they were supposed to do their due diligence to make sure that the Flint water plant, water's treated by water plants around the country, that the Flint water plant was equipped to treat the Flint River water. The Flint water plant needed $60 million in upgrades just to have the proper equipment to safely treat the water. At the time that they switched to the Flint River in April 2014, those upgrades were nowhere near completed. So that's where the liability came in JP Morgan and Wells Fargo. They didn't basically check every box to ensure, hey, the upgrades that this environmental order say that the plant needs to treat the Flint River water, they haven't been made. So that is where they failed to do their due diligence. That's a big part of the civil suit against them that was filed in 2020.
Mine is
all right, that was
55 years old and
intense.
getting dimmer all the time. I had a million excuses for my fogginess.
So that was Jordan Chariton on the Flint situation. Always does a great job with that. And yeah, the corruption and the reason that whole situation came about is unimaginable and unforgivable. I don't know how we're gonna, as a nation, correct that. But yeah, let's get mad. That's why we need a protest. Flint still doesn't have clean water, and we can change that. With the stroke of a pen, we can change that. We don't. And if your politician is not changing it, then they're not looking out for you. And I live in Michigan, so I know my politicians aren't looking out for me. I've met a few of those lobbyists and politicians in the state of Michigan, and they're not worried about that. They're not worried about Flint right now. It's a joke. It's a running joke in the nation. It's disgusting when people say it, and it makes me mad, but that's the situation we're in. But yeah, I'm going to start out the Stony Progressive state-by-state medical or recreational marijuana ballots. There's about 22 of them. I don't think I'm going to do but 5 or 6 a night. But that'll take about a month or so to go through. So let's start doing that on Weed Wednesday. And to start the whole thing out, I'm going to go a little backwards and start out with a clip from THom Hartman's old show. This is from 2015. And a clip about was there a game changer for legalized medical marijuana program? And of course, this is old, so it's always funny to see what they thought back then compared to what's happened.
Booker and Kirsten Gillibrand introduced a bill that would effectively legalize medical.
And hold on a second. I am going to mute me and play him.
Welcome back to tonight's Big Picture Politics panel. With me, Huey Newsom, Nate Sweet, and Jennifer Kearns. Earlier today, a bipartisan group of senators led by Rand Paul, Cory Booker, and Kirsten Gillibrand introduced a bill that would effectively legalize medical marijuana at the federal level. The so-called Compassionate Access, Research Expansion, and Respect States, or CARERS Act, would allow states to set their own marijuana policies. It would downgrade marijuana to a Schedule II drug. It would make it easier to bring marijuana from state to state. It would make it easier for banks to work with the marijuana industry. It would allow for more research on marijuana's medical properties, and it would make it easier for veterans under federal care to get access to medical marijuana. This all seems very straightforward. That last one, by the way, veterans. I had on my radio show 2 weeks ago, I guess, a doctor here in D.C. who does nothing but medical marijuana. This is he's built a practice around this. And one of the points that was made during that conversation was that one of the real heartbreaks is that medical marijuana is so successful in taking people off opiate drugs. In fact, in Colorado and Washington State, both those states in the last 2 years that pot's been legal have seen a decrease in the number of accidental overdose deaths from people using these, OxyContin kind of things, number one. And number two, it's apparently quite effective at treating PTSD. And yet veterans can't walk into a veterans hospital and say, may I get medical marijuana, because it's illegal at a federal level, and these are federal property. Thoughts?
I think that it's out of necessity. I don't think it will pass because of the nature of Capitol Hill today, with Republicans running both sides of the wall. But it's almost a necessity with so many states going, legalizing medical marijuana, and obviously for recreational uses in Colorado and other states as well. So I think it's a necessity because I don't understand why there isn't more of a convolution and more of a confusion with the federal law banning marijuana, but yet these states allowing it to happen. It is, to me, it's almost a 10th Amendment issue at this point, where the states are having or need the ability to make their own decisions within their own borders. Yeah. So it makes sense from that perspective.
I'm with you.
Well, what's interesting to me is that, at least from a sort of anecdotal perspective, it seems like the mainstream media only started taking this seriously when Rand Paul started to get involved. I mean, progressives have been pushing for
Well, it's because they needed a Republican.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, I think,
it's the Andy Harris syndrome. It's
right.
It's Republicans who continually are blowing up, attempts to decriminalize pot or reduce penalties or, whatever. So.
Right, and I'm talking about in general, a lot of the whole idea of liberalizing medical marijuana laws and liberalizing marijuana laws in
So the whole Rand Paul thing, they needed a Republican. I mean, he also runs on the libertarian fundamentals, and libertarians are generally, especially 2015, 2016, were really pushing for legalization, and that was, something that the progressives and libertarians can get a hold of as a mutual things is legalization. Legalize it, medicalize it, whatever. But libertarians and progressives both agree with that, and Rand Paul tried to run on a libertarian side of the Republicans in 2015, and that's why he didn't get any support from Fox News or mainstream media, because libertarians are not actually liked in Main Street circles. Of course.
general has only really been taken seriously over the past few years. I just think it's interesting and demonstrates the degree to which sometimes our media is held captive by right-wing talking points that it's not taken seriously when liberals are for it.
You could argue that Rand Paul coming out and in favor of this kicked it over. I would say that the citizens of 5 states voting for decriminalization, full legalization, that has caused everybody to take this seriously. Jennifer?
Well, I must be the fuddy-duddy on the panel, and I am persona non grata among the cannabis industry due to some of my latest reports at the Blaze about pot pregnancies in Colorado becoming this next wave of crack babies, because you have so many young women now who are addicted to THC.
But the old crack babies weren't actually crack babies.
Well, that's up for debate.
They've done longitudinal studies now on these, quote, crack babies, and they're not damaged.
Yeah. One thing I do admire is progressives and how they communicate. This is clearly the first step in getting nationwide legalized marijuana for everyone.
Sure.
And I think
which is good public policy, though.
Well, we disagree on that, but I think you got to look at states like Colorado and some cities in California which have tested this with mixed results. In Colorado, they said, wow, we're going to have over $100 million in additional revenue, which sounds great. It's a great way to hook Republicans in by hooking us on the fiscal argument. But if you look at the actual costs of it, over half of that is going to go back into law enforcement, crime prevention, getting kids off of it once they become addicted.
But that's not going to be nowhere near as expensive as this to have this massive prison industrial complex that we have right now devoted to the war on drugs.
Kids and people don't get addicted.
And I think that's the big point here. Is I think the reason why Americans are suddenly becoming more open-minded about liberal marijuana laws has a lot to do with losing trust in the government's ability to solve big problems through the war, through things like the war on drugs, the war on terror. And I think it's interesting that a lot of the dissatisfaction with the war on drugs came about at the same time as the war on terror was showing itself to be a big failure in a lot of ways. I think they're intricately connected. I think you look, a lot of the tactics that were used on the war on terror are used at the same time domestically on the war on drugs. I think there's a relationship there. Americans are becoming less trustful of their government's ability to solve big social programs through criminalization or war.
Well, now that pot is legal in Washington, D.C., I would just suggest if any of your friends are watching, Jennifer, hey, let her try it out. You know?
Well, it's interesting on the legalization issue. Even with medical marijuana in the state of California, they tried this in El Cerrito, California, outside of Los Angeles. And there's a white paper by the California State Sheriff's Association that talks about how even in cases of legalized medical marijuana, they had increased crime, increased gang activity, increased cartel activity, and that was during legalization.
Well,
so I think it's too early to tell.
That's because medical marijuana has virtually no impact on the market for drugs. I mean, you know, it's just it's a relatively small number of people. It's highly restricted. It's highly regulated. Where you see the change is when you just decriminalize everything. But anyway, it's a Florida climate change. Let's move along. Florida is ground zero for climate change, and here in the United States. But according to a shocking new report.
Gotta love how Tom just takes him down. Just says, nope, that's not true. Nope, that's not right. Just knocks down facts. It's always great to see Tom do that. So we will go over what they were saying. I first want to start off with the old Rand Paul. They were talking about that 2015 campaign. This is from that same campaign, Open Secrets. And the major reason that he went with marijuana is because marijuana found a person to run in the presidential campaign that they could give a bunch of money to. And Rand Paul was running a, like I said, libertarian, non-popular campaign. He didn't have anybody following him. So this was a great way for him to strengthen his association. And as we can see, you know, the medical marijuana policies, Republicans are starting to be okay with marijuana medically and recreationally, you know, as she just said, because of the tax thing. I mean, look at, they're donating to Republicans now. You donate to a Republican, they will go for whatever you, I mean, you know, Republicans will follow the money. So do Democrats. That's what I've been proving every night. You follow the money, and these guys are right there. Their policies tie right to where where their money comes from. And if they're only getting a little bit of money, that's because they have promises later on. So it's always follow the money. And if any of these people are getting medical marijuana, legalized marijuana, it's because there are PACs and there's money behind it now, and there's corporate money all up in the statewide changing of all these laws. So first state we're going to follow here, on medical marijuana Wednesday here, is going to be Arkansas. Arkansas currently is looking to expand their medical practices. Let's see here. Let's go to Ballotpedia first. So in Arkansas, voters could decide on two marijuana initiatives. One initiative would decriminalize marijuana, give limited immunity to cannabis businesses, and create regulations on the cannabis industry. The other would legalize marijuana for use for individuals 21 and older, regardless of residency. Both campaigns have until July 8th to collect the signatures. So if you live in Arkansas, you are in one of the many lucky states that gets to actually persuade initiatives. You get to go out there, sign one of these ballots, try to get that on the voting register, and then we can push for it to be voted for. So we're actually looking for signatures in Arkansas. So yeah, in Arkansas, there's three major campaigns. The marijuana reform, which had their form, they actually filed to the state in November. And then we have the True Grass, so Arkansas True Grass. is already in the signature process. So if you're looking to sign something in Arkansas, Arkansas Truegrass, they're looking for a ballot. They are the recreational push. They want to go for recreational marijuana for your state. They're looking for signatures. Get out there and sign something. So that is Arkansas. We can get out there. You guys have medical right now, but we can always book better. If you know anybody in the state, get them out there to sign that Arkansas Truegrass. And take a little local news clip on our state of Arkansas.
Back in 2016, now one organization hoping marijuana grows beyond medicinal use in the state. Arkansas Truegrass is the name of the group. They're trying to make effort now to add legalization of recreational marijuana on next November's ballot. 5 News reporter Bailey Devane has the details on this amendment and more from state lawmakers.
In the Arkansas Recreational Marijuana Amendment of 2022, it says people over the age of 21 would legally be able to purchase marijuana for recreational purposes in a licensed dispensary and to have the ability to grow up to 12 plants at home. It would also make it easier for dispensaries to open and obtain their license.
When the medical marijuana program came out, the average cost to get a dispensary was about $500,000. So we're proposing a more reasonable $500 a year managed through the Arkansas Department of Agriculture.
While Republican state lawmaker Aaron Pilkington, District 69, says legalizing recreational dispensaries would be bad for business at established medicinal dispensaries.
Medicine in Arkansas is very good, but it's also very expensive for the patients, and we'd like to see that change with the patients being able to grow their own.
If we do this, then that revenue from the medical will go away. See, all these people who have invested in the state, who have worked to navigate that system, who suddenly their businesses now, basically it's unprofitable.
The amendment also says all people in jail for non-violent cannabis offenses would be released and expunged of their charges. The organization currently has 25,000 signatures and needs 89,000 by June 2022 to move forward.
By releasing those prisoners from jail back into the economy, they need to work. And all I see when I drive around is multiple signs.
Concern I have about, who are we letting back in, things like that, if this does pass, and how do we do that in a way that doesn't throw our whole judicial system out of the way.
Covering news where you live, Bailey Devane, 5 News.
So that was a local news station going left and right, showing both sides of the thing with a complete asshole on the right. Sorry, but he was. And then somebody just trying to, an advocate and an asshole. That's usually what we have in this situation. How can you say small government and keep your hands off me if I can't smoke a plant in my house? Again, I have my medical card. I don't fight it, but, the prices in medical states are way higher than recreational states. And that's because of lack of competition and state regulation, which, again, Republicans are usually against. Okay. All right, so that was our quick overview of State 1, Arkansas. Not a lot of people there, not a lot of love there, so I am not going to spend all day on it. But we got Florida next. While I set that up, we are going to go back, check out the pest briefing from the day. Got some great stuff with them, of course. And, there's going to be a lot of Russia, Ukraine, and a lot of Supreme Court justices. But there's some good snarky attitudes of the day, and that's what I look forward to is Jen Psaki getting mad at somebody or just kind of blowing past somebody. It's always good stuff. So let's check this out while I set up the next state, guys.
3,000 troops to Europe. Previewed that announcement last week and then covered it today. Is there some new piece of information or intelligence that you saw in the last few days that went from a notional thing to something that to actual deployment?
I would not read this as a decision made based on any events over the last 48 hours or a couple of days. We've been in discussion and under discussion with our partners and allies in the region where these troops are going for several weeks now. And I would just outline for you, I know some of you may have watched John Kirby's briefing, but just to give some more specifics, the 1,000 service members from the U.S. Army's 2nd Cavalry Regiment, which is based in Germany, will reposition to Romania in the coming days. Secretary Austin had discussed this possibility in his deployment to Romania last week in his conversation with the Romanian defense minister. Second, we are moving 1,700 service members from Fort Bragg to Poland and approximately 300 service members from Fort Bragg to Germany. The president has been clear since the beginning of the escalation and the building of troops at the border, and been directly clear with President Putin, as he was in early December. If Russia stays on an escalatory path, which they clearly have, we will make forced posture adjustments to deter and defend against any aggression. This is not troops that will go into Ukraine. They're not fighting in Ukraine. This is us. This is the United States abiding by our commitments under Article 5 to support, reassure our partners in the region.
What is the milestone the president looking for for those troops to come back home? What's the reason if Russia de-escalates to troops to go back to their bases? Is that?
Well, I think as you touched on, it's not permanent. They're not intended to be permanent. And again, we already had troop presence in all of these countries where we are doing an increase in troops. So I can't give you an evaluation. Obviously, if Russia decides to de-escalate, to take de-escalatory steps, then certainly that would impact what the force posture needs are in other parts of the region.
Senator Hawley was about to state today saying that the president should take NATO membership off the table for Ukraine and wasn't going to do that. Do you think that sort of rhetoric or sort of position by a U.S. Senator right now is helpful in this showdown between the West and Russia?
Well, if you are just digesting Russian misinformation and parroting Russian talking points, you are not aligned with long-standing bipartisan American values, which is to stand up for the sovereignty of countries like Ukraine but others, their right to choose their own alliances, and also to stand against, very clearly, the efforts or attempts or potential attempts by any country to invade and take territory of another country. That applies to Senator Hawley, but it also applies to others who may be parroting the talking points of Russian propagandist leaders.
Different topic, we've been on for the last couple of days.
That was it right there, the Russia propaganda leaders. Oh no, Jen, come on, you know better. You know better. You have to know better, right? Like, seriously, guys, that's, I have to say it every time. She is the pot calling the kettle black, because she is literally the propaganda unit of the White House. And yes, our White House does massive amounts of propaganda. So, oh no, Jen, come on. That was too much right there. You just walked right into it. Oh, she just doesn't get it.
Here, developed countries, the death rate in the United States is far outpacing what's being seen abroad, largely as a result of the lower vaccination boosting rates here, as well as some other complications and the like. But does the president feel like he bears responsibility that, a year in office with this new wave that the U.S. wasn't better prepared and that more people are dying here on a per capita basis than are in Europe, for instance?
Well, the buck always stops with the president, and he would say that. But I would also tell you, Zeke, that the steps that we have taken to make progress, to prepare in the United States far outweigh what almost any other country in the world has done to date. That includes ensuring that 87% of the population has had at least one dose, continuing to increase the number of people who are boosted, ensuring we are taking steps to keep our schools open, to make sure communities that have surges have federal resources they need. So, of course, we are still at war with a virus. That is continuing, and that is the president's top priority. He has said that before. But I would also note all the steps that we have taken to ensure we are prepared as we have ups and downs in this pandemic.
And sorry, one last one. Yesterday you mentioned that the policy of the administration not to no longer comment about conversations with Joe Manchin about.
I didn't say Joe Manchin. I said you're often asking me about Joe Manchin. So I think that was the context of the question, which is absolutely fine. But it is our policy to not give specifics or to try not to give specifics of private conversations the president is having with members of the Senate, members of Congress. There are times, I know yesterday, of course, we had Senator Grassley and Senator Durbin here, and we did a pool spray of that. So you may say that's contradictory, but our effort and our focus is on making progress, and sometimes that means keeping those conversations private, oftentimes.
So I was curious, this is a shift from where we were a few months ago. Is that only because the Build Back Better bill failed? Is that why the policy changed?
I think it's a recognition that a lot more progress can be made when you're having private discussions, and that the president's focus in terms of what we're publicly communicating, how he's speaking to the American people, needs to be on what he's doing to make their lives better, not constant updates on the legislative process. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen. On the troops that were deployed today, you've said that they aren't going to be fighting, they'll be there to offer support. Can you offer any details about exactly what they will be doing there? And also about the distribution to these specific countries, why these 3 places, and why the 2,000 versus 1,000?
Sure. Well, to be clear, they're not going to Ukraine to fight, right? So I know that's what you were asking, but just for clarity for the transcript purposes. So our effort and our objective here has been to ensure we are ready for every contingency. And force posture increases as part of that preparedness. It's to reassure our allies, to whom, as I've said, we have a sacred obligation. This force, or these forces who have gone, are trained and equipped for a variety of missions to deter aggression and to reassure and defend our allies. In terms of why the specific numbers, I'd really point you to the Department of Defense, who makes the recommendations and ultimately, proposes for the president's sign-off. I would note that a number of our NATO allies have recently announced troop movements as well, similar to what was announced this morning. So, including the United Kingdom, France, Spain, Denmark, and the Netherlands, of their intent to deploy additional forces to reinforce NATO's eastern flank as well. So this is a reflection of our robust capabilities and our ability to distribute them across Europe, but it's also consistent with what a lot of our NATO partners are doing.
John Kirby said that the Pentagon has not ruled out deploying additional troops. Under what conditions would that happen?
These, again, are these decisions were based on close consultations with our partners in the region, the countries where these troops have been deployed to, of course, and also the escalatory actions by Russia. But, obviously the president is meeting with his national security team on a nearly daily basis, and we'll make evaluations as needed.
And then changing topics, Senator Lujan has been hospitalized after suffering a stroke. In addition to offering well wishes, of course, some of his Democratic colleagues have said this is a reminder that in such a close Senate, any unexpected development could be a challenge to moving forward their agenda. So has the president spoken with Senator Lujan, and does he share similar concerns?
Not at this point. Let me just reiterate, I know you referenced them, but that we have all been thinking of Senator Lujan and his family. I know his team put out an update on his recovery last night, and he's 49 years old, so I would also note that, but I would point you to them for any specifics on his status. Of course, we're thinking about him, his family, his entire team at this point in time. I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of concerns about.
For example, Senator Coons brought up yesterday that this could be a challenge for moving forward since that 50-50 split is so critical. So is that something that the president has also considered?
Well, life is precious, as we know. You're most familiar with the average age of senators in the Senate, but that is true on both sides of the aisle. So I would just say we spend most of our time engaging in good faith about the president's agenda and not making those calculations.
And then just one more on the Supreme Court. Given the president's commitment to diversify it, will he make similar pledges? Should we have another opportunity to nominate someone? For example, there's never been an Asian American justice or an LGBTQ justice. So will he make a similar pledge?
Well, I would say that about judges, or just in general, I would say that if you look at the president's record of judges, circuit court judges, lower court judges, it speaks for itself. He has had a enormous number of judges he has nominated who are people of color, who are women. He has nominated and confirmed an extraordinarily diverse bench of qualified individuals to serve on the courts. And that is certainly a priority for him. I don't have any new pledges to announce for you, but I think I would point you to his record, which speaks to his commitment to ensuring the court is more diverse. Lower courts are more diverse, the higher courts are more diverse, and that is something he certainly will continue to look at as a priority.
Thanks, Jen. Go ahead. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I'll come back to you. I was just going to ask another follow-up on the troop movements. Is President Biden concerned that Putin might use them as a pretext to act against Ukraine?
Well, I think what's important to be very clear about here is that there is one aggressor here. That aggressor is Russia. They are the ones who have gathered tens of thousands of troops on the border. They are the ones who are threatening to invade a sovereign country. NATO is a defensive alliance. The steps and actions we are taking.
One aggressor. Just one. America has never been aggressor. Just one aggressor. We don't amp anything up with all of our many actions. We're only one aggressor, and that is Russia. I think that's where I wanted to end that, because that was just, what are you talking about? Oh, John, you just don't get it, do you? She doesn't. It's her fault, but she doesn't. I'm supposed to say it's not her fault, right? No, it's her fault. She doesn't get it. All right, let's move on to Florida. Not there. So we already have medical marijuana in Florida, so I don't have to look up the MPP site. They only take on medical. But in Florida, voters could decide changes to the state's medical marijuana amendment approved by voters in 2016 with two separate initiatives. Initiative 1802 would add 9 mental health disorders to the list of qualifying conditions to purchase and use medical marijuana. Initiative 1805 would redefine medical use under the measure to include growing up to 9 medical marijuana plants. We can't grow our own plant in the state. That is the biggest thing. Costs cannot be driven down if we're not allowed to grow our own, and that should be such a basic right to grow a plant, especially if you can be prescribed it. So that is on the initiative for Florida this year, guys. That is a massive initiative. It's not going to be on marijuana movement, which everybody should check out. That's where a lot of these are coming from. But there's Florida bills are going to be 1805, which is going to get medical use marijuana patients to able to grow up to 9 plants. That is such an important bill for us. Also, adding other mental health disorders is not a bad thing by any means. But this one is from a local news station, News for Jacksonville, going about the medical bills that are on Florida Capitol Hill.
This is not likely the year recreational marijuana will be legalized in Florida, but as Mike Vasalinda tells us, that's not stopping some Florida lawmakers from trying to legalize it.
State Representative Spencer Roach tried to limit THC in medical marijuana last year.
I think it's accurate to describe that bill as prohibitionist in nature.
This year, Roach has teamed with Democrat Andrew Learned, who last year co-sponsored a legalization bill.
I want to try to be the guy who's effective and gets things done.
Now the two would make medical marijuana more consumer-friendly by testing it, requiring more training for doctors, and lengthening the time a patient's card is valid. But when it comes to legalization,
I am practical in the sense that I know that bill's not going to go anywhere.
But that's not stopping House and Senate members from pushing recreational marijuana.
Is arresting people for this largely victimless activity helping anybody?
The 157-page bill would also expunge marijuana convictions and grant clemency to low-level offenders.
Let's also see this as a source of revenue to cover so many other expenses we have in our state where every person benefits.
Legalizing marijuana is almost certain to be...
In Florida, we don't even allow other people's cards. So all these people that come down here on vacation for a week or a month or whatever, they can't use their cards from another state to go into one of our dispensaries and spend their money and pay taxes. Instead, they have to go black market and find it through some neighbor or friend that they have down here. Which, wouldn't we rather get that tax dollars? Doesn't that seem basic to anybody and everybody?
In issuing the governor's race, Ron DeSantis has told us twice he's opposed to it, but all three Democrats running against him are for it. We asked Representative Hinson how she would deal with the governor's opposition.
I'm going to pray about that one.
And the earliest that voters could take the matter into their own hands is now 2024, and if successful, it would likely take 2 to 3 more years before the first bud was sold. Reporting from the state capitol, Mike Vassalinda, Channel 4.
Trying to hit us with some pessimism, huh? I mean, you can turn it and flip it within 2 or 3 months, but Florida is currently, they're trying to lower THC, that 14% thing. That was absolutely a push. They're trying to lower it to 14%, our medical marijuana, so that way you couldn't get high from it. You could just reap the benefits of it. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes you need anxiety, and that's being stoned. Sometimes you need anti-nausea. That's not just the CBD joint doesn't get rid of my nausea. The CBD joint helps a little bit with anxiety, not like this indica though. This indica kills my anxiety and really helps with my nausea. So yeah, 14% might not do that. But thank you, Florida, for constantly trying to make the Congress people, we voted it in. Well, I didn't. I'm not here in 2016. They voted it in 2016. It took to like 2018 before they let it medically happen. And then it was like the most ridiculous system, it's this ridiculous system they had. And now, I mean, they're trying to make things harder in the state government while we're voting it almost to be recreational, possibly.
On the go. Watch today's biggest political events live or on demand, anytime, anywhere.
I watch C-SPAN, screw you.
Well, here tonight, recreational marijuana advocates in Florida are hoping that it will get the green light for next year. They believe that new efforts to decriminalize the drug on the federal level will motivate the state legislature to do the same. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer announcing the federal bill last week. He does not yet have the votes, though, but has secured the support of major corporations, including Amazon. If it passes, Florida might be inclined to again follow suit as it did with hemp.
That's what we hear over and over. Well, it's federally prohibited, and so descheduling, yes, it will move the needle absolutely to the next song.
And bipartisan supporters of recreational marijuana believe passage would add millions in new state tax revenue and reduce the burden on the justice system.
Yeah, always think about the tax revenue.
Here's what $5 a month would limit.
We get Republicans, right? We talk about the taxes, and that money would be a massive push for the tax money revenue for Florida, and you can't argue that. Like, even just, I mean, there's so many little small steps we could do, even just with the medical. Like, again, we could open it up to other states' cards so that our dispensaries could give other states' cards. People who are vacationing here for a couple weeks, a month, they could get access to their medicine through our state and make tax revenue for our state. So basic. Here's another.
Florida is growing, but will it be enough to make it on the ballot in 2022? Several organizations are working hard to make sure. As Fox 13's Jordan Bowen reports, new proposed legislation to end the federal prohibition on marijuana could sway support.
As of July 1st, 2021, recreational marijuana is now legal in at least 18 states, including Washington, D.C. and Guam. By 2022, several...
So Guam, huh? That sounds like a good place to live. How far is it to live in Guam? I mean, it's American, right? Sounds pretty awesome. Medical marijuana, middle of the ocean. It's gotta be pretty nice. It's like Hawaii, but cheaper and more isolate. Sounds good to me.
Grassroots organizations are hoping Florida will join that list.
You can walk into any Walgreens and get aspirin without a doctor's recommendation.
Cannabis advocates feel as though adults 21 and older who are responsible cannabis users should be able to utilize cannabis.
A recent poll shows 59% of Floridians support the legalization of recreational marijuana, compared to 31% who oppose it. That's according to public.
Doesn't matter. It's all about the money, and corporations are starting to push things. So that should mean that we're going to move that forward. Because corporations always help with the money. Doesn't actually matter. Public opinion does not matter at all.
Public policy polling, who surveyed 590 Florida voters back in March.
Why is there this disconnect between public policy and what people want? And it really does boil down to the other forces at work that our representative government has at play.
As Chris Cano with Normal Suncoast Chapter explains, it comes down to money. His group, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, has been working for years to get recreational marijuana legalized in Florida. Advocates came close but fell short earlier this year. In April and in June, the Florida Supreme Court struck down 2 different ballot initiatives to legalize recreational marijuana, calling the summaries for both initiatives misleading. Now, organizations are holding out hope federal legislation could sway support in their favor. A new bill set to be introduced by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer later this year would remove marijuana from the list of federally controlled substances, essentially treating marijuana like tobacco and alcohol.
That takes away that excuse and that crutch of local and state politicians saying, well, it's still illegal federally. So, once that's out of the way, then what's their excuse to deny their constituency this public policy position which so many people deem as right?
Yeah, that is a big thing. The federal talking about it is a game changer. Completely changes everything. If the Fed decriminalizes, you will see all the states that are like on the fence, which we're not getting to every state anywhere near tonight or tomorrow or the next Wednesday. But if you see the Fed go, it's going to be impossible for all these in-between states and the states that are really trying to, hold on to it's being in the House or being on a ballot, but they keep knocking it down or whatever. They're not going to have the opportunity. They're going to have to go forward. And I thought I could find this without having to go there. I cannot see it. I want to check that out. I have that video ready and willing. The Fed going over so yeah, the Fed decriminalizing would finally change America. But I mean, then you could travel from state to state with your medical. I did not say that, I guess. Oh, there we go. Yeah, let's check that out. After a video game commercial.
Republican lawmaker from South Carolina introduced a bill in the House that would decriminalize recreational marijuana use at the federal level. Now, the move gives states the power to determine whether to legalize the drug for residents who are over age 21. The measure, which has bipartisan support and will be co-sponsored by half a dozen GOP House members, would levy a 3% federal excise tax on cannabis products that would go towards small businesses and programs like retraining law enforcement and mental health services. It would also expunge...
Dang, that's some good policy right there. Mental health and social services for your tax on marijuana federally? That is smart stuff.
Nonviolent cannabis-only offenders. We're joined right now by Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina. She introduced the bill. Thank you for being with us.
And good morning. Thank you for having me.
So let's make this really easy to understand, because I want to talk about those non-violent drug offenders who have only used marijuana. That is something of interest to a lot of people, because there has been some question over whether they are being fairly treated or fairly judged once breaking a law like this. Right, and I crafted this bill in a way that brought together pieces of different bills that had been filed previously or discussed, whether those were Republican or Democrat. I tried to make this palatable for both sides of the aisle, and having expungement and release of federal nonviolent cannabis users it was a big component of that. Republicans and Democrats alike have for years now tried to create second chances for these kinds of individuals, and this bill does that. It will affect about 2,600 inmates given the expungement and release, and then it allows states to do what they...
And I will say it time and time again on this. You don't have to agree with somebody all the time. You don't have to agree with them once in a while. But when you agree with them, admit it. And I agree with this Republican on this issue. I said it. I can agree with a Republican on an issue. It doesn't matter. It's an issue, not the name of the letter in front of your name. It doesn't matter. It's the issues that matter.
Are doing today and want to do with regards to release and expungements. This is a great bill that gets the federal government out of the way of what states are already doing today and levies a 3% excise tax and creates a framework for regulation at the federal level, much like alcohol. And so the goal is to get Democrats and Republicans to work together on a bill that's viable, and this one is the art of the possible and passable.
Let's talk about where that money will go from that excise tax in just a bit. But recreational marijuana, it's already legal in 18 states. So when you make it legal at the federal level, how will that affect the states who do not have that same law in place?
Well, it doesn't change anything for states for whatever they're doing today. They can continue doing that today and would be grandfathered in. Across the United States, there are 47 states, so all but 3 have some form of cannabis reform or legalization. For example, in my home state of South Carolina, we permit CBD and hemp is grown there. In Florida, they have medical cannabis. In California and 17 other states, they have adult recreational use. And so none of that would change. States would be able to operate the way that they're operating today. And this really just provides the framework for how it would get regulated. So at the federal level, if you're a grower, it's under the USDA. If your product, it's the ATF, Interstate Commerce under TTB, and I'm calling it FDA light for some labeling on medical cannabis at the federal level, and states would be able to regulate what they do with medical cannabis. This is something for everyone in it. If you're not a pro cannabis, that's okay, because this doesn't make it legal for recreational use everywhere. That's not what this does. It allows states to do what they want to do and are doing today. If you're pro cannabis, this allows states to do what they're already doing today and have been for almost 25 years in some cases. So I'm really proud of the product we produced and look forward to working with Democrats and Republicans to make it even better. But there are
Oregon, Colorado, and California medical marijuana for 25 years, and we're still discussing it like it's maybe not a good thing. And you're still they still have, like on the THom show, they still have people that say that they're the right-wing talking points and like, oh, it causes crime and that. Like 25 years medical marijuana in 3 of our states, and they still use that talking point. I'm glad she is reasonable. And again, you can agree with an issue completely with somebody who's supposedly on your other side.
There are a lot of state lawmakers who are really against it. In fact, in your home state, this bill, again, you've mentioned it a couple of times just in this interview that states have the right to choose. But in terms of the pushback, what do you make of it? What is the biggest concern with lawmakers who say no way?
Well, my state party put out this kind of bizarre statement a couple of days ago about the bill. But guess what? In Republican South Carolina, there's a Republican legislature that led reforms to allow CBD and hemp in the state of South Carolina. And guess what? It's Republicans that are leading an effort to bring medical cannabis to South Carolina. That bill, the Compassionate Care Act, gets a hearing in January. I worked on that bill as a state lawmaker. And this is a 70-30 issue. I don't know why some Republicans are pushing back on federalism and states' rights. That's something that Republicans champion.
Progressive things that have been done, the acceptance of marijuana more in society. Do you think that this excise tax is a way of smoothing things over with those who think that this is still something that should be illegal?
Certainly, and I think there is some sentiment out there. The beauty of the 3% excise tax, it is very much different than Senator Schumer's proposal of 25%. If you have a tax that high, there's going to continue to be an illegal, illicit, and black market. And so this bill, again, would provide a framework that would reduce the proclivity for illicit states across the country. So this is a really responsible bill, and, cannabis is legal in some form or fashion in 47 states already, including South Carolina. And so if you want it done in a responsible way, in a bipartisan way, Republicans have to have a seat at the table, and we've got to have a voice. And that's what this legislation does.
Representative Mace, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you giving us some insight.
Thank you.
Yeah, that wasn't so bad. See? And it doesn't matter who takes it forward. I remember 5 years ago when Tulsi Gabbard went on and tried to do the Stop Funding Terrorism bill, and she had a Republican co-sponsor with her because people are so scared of the weapons industry, they don't want to sponsor anything that would actually stop war. And they had to blindly fight, and they got nothing. And no one would ever put that forward for a vote, even though it's the most common sense bill ever. Oh my God. All right, this dry hair is killing me. All right, so that was Florida tonight. Let's go back and check out a video. I want to check this out. It was a live stream today. I was going to save it for the end, so I might finish it off here. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah. Need my moderator. Everybody got 2 halves of the show. Nobody joined us. So, I did want to check this out. Rome has a couple good rants here, and I'm going to finish my my blaze. Probably react a little bit, of course, and yeah, let's finish off with the Revolutionary Blackout Network, and they had their roundtable today, and it was some good conversation. It's a 2-hour interview. If anybody wants to check it out, let's check out like 5-10 minutes of it.
Whoa! I don't know about that, Peggy.
You saw a comment. You can put it up.
Hold on. What the hell?
If you're logged in, Rome, you can put the comment in.
When I missed the rituals, I missed them.
Yeah. So Courtney. So let me start with you, Courtney. So the question for you is, in the article or in the video also, they talk about how some of the stereotype or some of the pushing this derogatory projection about black men is coming from black academia, meaning the Dr. Jason Johnsons, the Don Lemons, just black academia, and black activism. Go ahead.
Funny you should say that. I literally wrote down Don Lemon isn't liberating anybody. Just wrote down. Don Lemon having a college degree doesn't mean shit for us. Okay, also because Don Lemon wants to be in that elite circle. Yes. Don Lemon, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to be rich, if you want to be that person, fuck everybody else. That's your mindset. You know what I mean? So a lot of these people, it's the same thing we talked to JB about this yesterday, but, pull up the ladder behind you. And we see that time and time again, but I feel like that's why the elite media goes so hard at the people who can actually make a difference. And they do this with black women as well. Like an example I would use is on Bad Faith podcast, Bree had some academics on there, and they were talking about Cardi B and how she had asked Joe Biden about Medicare for all. And instead of this academic professor, she was a black woman, instead of her praising this and doing all of that, she started focusing on like kind of how capitalistic she is and what she wears on Instagram. And I'm like, that is not the point. We have a person who has access to power, but see how they flip the conversation, you know what I mean? And it's like she was devaluing what Cardi B could bring to the table. And I feel like, black elites do that so much with your Jason Johnsons and all these people. They immediately, they say they want to be there for the struggle and they want to cover black issues on their shows and, what their white liberal audience wants to hear. But when it comes to calling out the people who are actually in the way, who actually wrote problems, which is themselves, they're not going to get out of the way. They're not going to.
It's such a white liberal approach to helping the black community. Like the black elite has, I'm not going to say black elite, but the black bourgeoisie or the black capitalist class has such a white, liberal, hands-off, barely doing anything approach to helping the black community, while at the same time criticizing those who are doing more, putting down those who are doing the gritty work. So back to the question. So Keisha, if Courtney, if you were finished, let's bring Keisha in here also. So go ahead.
Later on, I don't know if we're going to get to it in the article, but they do talk about the ugly Negro and then the Chappelle of it all. And that's how I kind of feel, when they try to devalue artists, like, oh, they don't have college degrees, or, oh, they're just a comedian, or they're just a basketball player, but they have more connection to what is really going on. And oftentimes they'll be talking more realistically about something that needs to be said for the black community, and they try to demonize them, And so they're those gatekeepers, of course. But I
know, but black comedy, what you just said, black comedy has always been that. Richard Pryor, it's critiquing or uncovering for white audiences what's happening to black people, but making it in a comical way. But they're addressing. This is what comedy has always done. Comedy has always had the best critiques of establishments, of corruption. Comedy has always been that, in my opinion, especially in particular black comics.
Well, let's hope it stays that way, because people are getting too politically correct. Everybody just calm down. It's just a joke. Like, we need some jokes. We can't be so serious about everything. People haven't been pulling the punches the way they used to. I mean, people are almost scared to really say, and that's why I think, this article talks about it, but Chappelle's one of the greats, but also because he has the financial backing where he can say what he wants to say and be like, all right, well, fuck it, either take it or leave it. And a lot of people, I think, because I worked in stand-up comedy, and from what I can see, you have to do so much yesing what white liberals want, because that's who's casting you. That's who's casting you in a commercial. That's who wants to try to put you on a late night show. Make sure your set is clean, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's, you see people really just try to fit into these archetypes of what they think the black friend that a white person would want. And so sometimes I do worry about like the future of comedy with that grit being lost, because you do have to make money, and they're like getting tighter on what is being acceptable. We used to hear wild stuff back in the day. You can really, you know what I mean? Whereas I feel like it's much more.
They don't want to hear a Red Fox album, because they don't want to hear a Red Fox album because they really talk gritty. But there aren't any other spaces, Ron. Are there any other spaces left where people can talk and really just talk about how they feel?
This is what they want. This is why, even if I didn't agree with what the nigga said, I don't care, man. Like, that shit don't. He's rich. His life is not affecting yours. What he said. Right. Even if it was, like, until Dave Chappelle told people to get up and start hurting people physically, like I do, then he probably have a problem, because he has a platform and probably,
that can get people to actually do that. Yeah, that is great.
Until then, dude, this is how they are using cancellation through different, variants, I should say. They come at you through the political side. We can't say too much on YouTube. We can't say too much on this one. We can't say too much on rap anymore. Remember Too Loud Crew? And now people get mad at Cardi B. Like, what? This is nothing.
Is all of this about white comfort? Is all of this
look at Joe Biden getting in office. All that was about was white comfort and making white people more comfortable.
That is a great point.
Trump was actually pulling up a lot of their masks, seeing, especially political wise, they actually did well under Trump. White families did well under Trump, no matter how much they hate him and no matter how much bullshit they want to talk about him. They did well under Trump, and once they was like, let's get Joe Biden back in office. And I was like, hold on, this nigga get the crime bill, get this and that, but he's not Trump, and he's a Democrat. He said he's sorry, and he's gonna make it up, and blah blah blah. Then what he do? Kept Trump stuff in office. He's actually fighting for Trump against his people, and Biden administration is actually fighting for Trump in office right now for sexual assault cases. They fighting for Trump border laws, and they have surpassed them on fossil fuel and given the
drilling permits.
Like, come on.
Pass them on.
So if you didn't like Trump, then what you like, dude? Like, is it? Oh well, it's just the main tweets. Okay, well, it's white comfort, because a lot of black people didn't even give a fuck, like, on the streets.
Yeah, it's really about white comfort. And I saw you.
Niggas ain't give a fuck.
And I saw you shaking your head real vigorously, Lynn, when I said, "Is this about white comfort?" Did you want to speak to that? Is all of what's happening not all, but it's some of what's happening to make white people feel comfortable. Go ahead. Liv. I'm sorry, Liv. Uh-oh, is she frozen? Liv, can you hear me?
I'm sorry, you just cut out. So you just say it again? That's politics is not talked about. Because
I had to skip through because that was a segment that she gets delayed and she gets it screams and buffers a bunch on her. So I'm just kind of trying to skip through her part here because she has a hard time hearing them and it's a very confusing couple seconds.
That is the problem. You're not listening when people actually live through this or talk.
Yeah, but this is what I wanted. The Rome rant here is fantastic.
I'm talking about the white people that this applies to. But I think everybody kind of already knew that. Obviously, what I'm talking about is
evil. Let's stop. I never bought into any of that, but that's also not. That's politics is not talked about because
a lot of these motherfuckers do agree with Joe Biden and a lot of these laws that he has put into play because it keeps our communities down. Because without Joe Biden's laws, they wouldn't be able to gentrify our neighborhoods. You know, right? They wouldn't have our neighborhoods over police like we are animals, right? Because this is what we said. We said, hey, the police is getting too much funding in black neighborhoods.
The crime rate went up. The crime rate went up. So we have to fund the police. That's what they're going to say. But are we stereotyping white people? No, I'm talking about the white people that this applies to. But I think everybody kind of already knew that. Obviously, what I'm talking about doesn't apply to Liv because Liv is not like what I'm talking about. So when I'm speaking about when I'm saying white people, white America, I'm talking about the white people that believe in what I'm saying, whatever it is I'm discussing. So just to address that. But like my grandma used to say, a hit dog will holler.
Like a motherfucker.
Right? Yeah.
Shut the fuck up and listen. That is the problem. You're not listening when people actually live through these neighborhoods are talking to you about what's going on. That's your fucking problem, man.
Right.
Listen.
It's like we have to talk about. This is not about the person's comment. It's just a broader. It's like we have to. What's so jarring to me, and we kind of really went off topic, which is fine. What's so jarring to me is that white comfort is put over the pain of anybody else. White comfort. And just think about Joe Biden when Rome said Joe Biden did this, and this, and it's like, but he's better than Trump. This is the whole story. It's your pain, Rome, incarceration, but over here, because they don't have any connection to that pain.
And they don't have any connection. You care about the people that Trump didn't let in his building? I don't give a fuck about a couple of black people. Joe Biden is the only reason why there's laws into play right now. Right. But him to even pull that type of shit off in a city like that. Mm-hmm. So we don't get the 40-year record, and we can't compare the records, but we can compare mouthpieces. Shut the fuck up, because that's what tells me that you don't care about human lives. Because when I'm talking about crime bill, when I'm talking about wars, the million Iraqi deaths, and we're talking about funding Israel now, we're talking about deaths, not elections. Not elections, not just some vote. This is not just a vote. This is people's lives. It might not be yours.
But out of sight, out of mind. Out of sight, out of mind. This is the reason why our news don't really report on foreign policy, at least not on cable news, because we don't have any interest as a nation on what's going on, how everybody else is living. Like, we literally feel like that's what you get kind of thing, because we've been propagandized as a people. Like, for Americans to be okay, for little kids to be making iPhone parts, to be making Nikes, like, we're fine with that. We're fine with our country. It's because it's not happening to us. That idea, that individualistic way of looking, really it's a racist way of looking at things. Because everybody who's being affected by all of this stuff happens to be black or brown or indigenous. which is weird, you know, because you never hear about Switzerland getting bombed. You never, you know what I'm saying? You never hear about all these white. Right.
Well, that's the thing about black somebody said something about black complicity in the comments, which I think is a fair point. You know, it's a fair point. We do support and have historically supported some of the things that have been not great for our communities, but I think that goes into the deeper conversation of what we're talking about with being so propaganda.
That's what I just said. Shut the fuck up and listen. Shut the fuck up and listen. We only have mouthpieces like Don Lemon, you know, like whoever the fuck got a good platform that's black or colored, whatever the fuck you guys call yourselves nowadays. We only got them people because of who? Who gave us the platforms? Who gave us the power, the money? Right. So go deeper. Go deeper.
Yeah.
No. All right.
There's a reason why only those people listen.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Let Courtney finish.
Come on. News channel. I think you know more than
It feels like, Rome, you're having muscle memory reaction to something.
These people I just don't get. That's why I don't even waste my time on debate and talk to people like that on the ground. If you're like that, fuck you, bro. I go talk. I go flip your neighbors. I go flip your community around you. Fuck you.
Courtney, that really struck what you said. Really struck a nerve.
Rome is fantastic.
What you were saying there.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same. It's just the same thing of the quote that opened it up. You know, the black people who get college degrees are not necessarily going to be the ones who turn around and help your community. And you know, it's sad because I mean, basically, unfortunately, falling into a trap and doing exactly what you want them to do, because what they want you to do is try to assimilate to whiteness as much as possible. So they want you to go to college and be like, "Ooh, I want to hang out. You know, I want to do this." I mean, and look, I lived in DC for a long time, and I definitely fell into that trap where it was like, "Oh, I want to do all these cool things," and you separate yourself from where you came from. You know, like, "Oh, my family's kind of country, and they talk kind of country," and like, "Oh, I wish my dad would pronounce his R's right," and this and that. Like, no. Like, we have to. I mean, there's just a lot of deprogramming that everybody needs to do.
But I mean, but look at the incentive for people to make this change.
Yes.
How do you survive if you don't speak, quote unquote, right? How do you get a good job if you don't?
And the comment there that a few of them are nodding to right now is college tends to feed you into the capitalist machine. It feeds you into the grinder. It turns you into what they want a good capitalist to be. So most people who leave college are meant to be good capitalists. They want you consuming, they want you earning, saving, familying, doing all the things capitalism has taught you to do with sitcoms and news and every other way they could try to push it into our lives. And that is what they do. All right, I'm going to end with a short protest segment before we call it night, guys. Yeah, let's call it Uruguay sees protests against gender violence. So I always want to do something with protests and strikes when I can find it. I'm going to save a few more clips that I have not gone over tonight, but 5 clips in 2 states I think is going to be good enough. We didn't quite get there tonight. But I'm smoking indica, and the handful of us that are here, I'm indica in. So let's check out these protests in Uruguay.
Mobilized in Uruguay against gender violence. For Montevideo, our correspondent Mateo Grill has the story.
Streets, various feminist collectives, including the Intersocial Feminist Association and other activists, march in Montevideo and different departments of the country against rape culture.
The clear and strong message is to be against rape culture. When we say rape culture, what we are talking about is that society endorses rape culture, because when I am with a guy and I tell him yes, but I don't know, no is no. That is part of rape culture. Educating girls not to wear short skirts, as a journalist said, so they don't get raped, instead of educating boys to understand consent. That is rape culture. Rape culture is the pact of silence among men.
The mobilization arose in response to a horrendous gang rape of a woman in Montevideo, which is now being investigated by the justice system. The demonstrators demanded to be heard.
This is a question born from the pain, from the rage, that we have to experience this kind of situation. And two issues. One that shut off all of us, but also this feeling that it could have happened to you and that is something that I think occurred to all of us. The another time, a girl who said, I am alive despite getting wasted. And when you see that young girls are saying, I am alive despite getting drunk, it shows you that we have a serious problem as a society, and that we have to find a way to be heard and to be understood, that these are not isolated situations.
Participants denounced that rape culture is deep-rooted and naturalized as a practice of abuse of power, of war, of colonization, and that is still silenced under the most perverse mechanisms. Demonstrators denounce the acts of sexual violence against women are not isolated events, but part of the patriarchal system.
They are not isolated cases, but are part of a patriarchy, a structural problem, a systematic situation that we have to abolish.
The thousands of women who participated in the demonstration demanded a real commitment from the government, the allocation of resources, and the development of strong public policies to protect all citizens, including women, dissidents, children, and adolescents.
That was a lot of people.
Chase First Banking, a debit card for kids and a set of tools to help you.
That's all I have in me tonight, guys. We got a couple states in. We got a lot of good clips in. Let's do it again tomorrow night around midnight. I got the rest of the clips. Maybe we'll knock out North Carolina and Missouri tomorrow, so that way we can start knocking out states. Do a Stony takedown. Check out who this Nancy Marie in what was that, South Carolina. We'll check out who she is and where she's about and what she's about. That sounds like a good Stony progressive kind of link one night to the next, huh? But besides that, guys, that's all I had for tonight. I'm not going to do the other states. Like I said, it has been a long night. Let's call it good.